The cinematic Western is more than just a genre. It is a mythology. It's an American legend about justice, the frontier, and the lonely path of the hero. We watch these films for the final moments, the iconic gunfight, the ride into the sunset, or the moment a great man finally faces his reckoning. But what if that powerful ending you remember wasn't the one the filmmaker intended? In the late 1960s and 1970s, a new breed of director began challenging the traditional, happy-go-lucky Hollywood Western. They sought bleaker, more complex, or psychologically ambiguous conclusions. But standing between their vision and the final cut were studio executives, motivated by commercial anxiety and a deep-seated fear of giving the audience a truly challenging or tragic end. This is the story of 6 iconic Westerns that were in some fundamental way betrayed by the very people who funded them. It's a battle between the artist and the mogul, where the pursuit of an easy dollar ruined a generation of cinematic masterworks. We're going to uncover how a happy ending was forced onto a dark psychological duel, how a voiceover narration was stapled onto a film to replace its complex heart, and how the biggest box office catastrophe of its time was a direct result of studio panic. Stay with us as we pull back the curtain on the legacy of the lost ending. Part 1. The Studio's Hammer. Our journey begins with the most catastrophic example of studio sabotage in Hollywood history, Michael Cimino's Heaven's Gate. Cimino had an immense vision. His film was meant to be a sprawling, nearly 4-hour social epic, a sweeping critique of American-class war and industrial violence. Loosely based on the real-life Johnson County War of 1892, he was an auteur, given near unprecedented control over his project. But when the film ran wildly over budget, the studio, United Artists, swiftly reasserted its power. When the original full-length version premiered, it was met with a savage critical backlash. Panicked, United Artists pulled the film from release and demanded a brutal recut. The result was a truncated theatrical version, hacked down to just 149 minutes. The fundamental damage was narrative fragmentation. Essential context, character development, and the story's political framework were simply cut out. The film's controversial ending, featuring a time jump that showed the protagonist years later as a shell of his former self, was completely robbed of its emotional power. Cimino intended this bleak conclusion to symbolize the death of youthful idealism. But without the surrounding context in the shortened cut, the time jump felt arbitrary and unsatisfying. The theatrical release failed miserably, grossing only $3.5 million against a budget that soared up to $44 million. It became the most catastrophic box office bomb of its time. The commercial and critical failure of this truncated ending solidified the studio's impulse to intervene aggressively, effectively precipitating the demise of the director-driven film production era. It was a self-fulfilling prophecy. Studio fear created the very disaster it was trying to prevent. Thankfully, in 2012, the definitive director's cut was released, restoring the structure and clarifying the narrative. It ran for 216 minutes and was met with critical acclaim, rescuing the film from its initial label as a flop. Part 2. The Forced Happy Ending. Next, we look back to a classic Western, Howard Hawks's 1948 masterwork, Red River. This film is centered on a deeply psychological and volatile conflict between the ruthless patriarch Thomas Dunson, played by John Wayne, and his adopted son, Matt Garth, played by Montgomery Clift. The entire film builds toward a profound, potentially tragic resolution to this powerful father-son struggle. The tension is nearly unbearable as the two men finally face off in a climactic, high-stakes duel. But the theatrical ending delivers a moment of severe tonal dissonance. Just as the conflict reaches its peak, the heroine, Tess Millay, intervenes. She physically stops the men and demands they reconcile. Director Howard Hawks later described this intervention as corny. Critics called it a jarring, unearned resolution that transformed the epic drama into mindless screwball slapstick. The original narrative demanded a darker, honest resolution that dealt with the consequences of Dunson's toxic ambition. Instead, the studio received a conventionally happy ending, sacrificing the emotional power of the high-stakes conflict for commercially mandated closure. It fundamentally weakened the film's structural and psychological integrity. Part 3. Rhythmic Destruction. Sam Peckinpah is a name that comes up often when discussing studio interference. His films were often elegiac, slow-burning reflections on the twilight of the Old West and the inevitability of death. His 1973 film, Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, was fraught with production conflict, budget cuts, and personal troubles. After Peckinpah submitted his final preview cut, he abruptly abandoned the project. MGM seized the opportunity, releasing an unauthorized theatrical cut that aggressively streamlined the narrative, removing about 16 minutes of crucial, character-focused scenes. Peckinpah's direction relied on a measured, melancholic pace to build tension. The rushed theatrical cut destroyed this essential rhythm. It transformed the quiet, introspective moments into episodic action sequences. Most critically, the studio edit rushed the scene following Billy's death. It eliminated the sour, lingering mourning after that was present in Peckinpah's cut, thus robbing the finale of its emotional gravity and the profound sense of personal loss. The studio's intervention led to the rhythmic destruction and loss of pathos that Peckinpah had so carefully crafted. Peckinpah's earlier 1965 film, Major Dundee, also fell victim to similar studio pressure. The film, which followed a morally compromised Union officer on a desperate expedition, was intended to be full of moral ambiguity and internal chaos. But Columbia Pictures severely truncated the release and committed an act of thematic sabotage by imposing a lengthy voiceover narration. This imposed narration, supposedly representing pages from a diary, was intended to enforce narrative coherence. Instead, it functioned as a narrative crutch, directly diluting the complex character arc and Major Dundee's psychological descent. The studio, unwilling to let the moral compromise speak for itself, mandated literal explanations that oversimplified the internal turmoil. This prioritizing of literal structure over the director's desired raw ambiguity is a classic manifestation of studio distrust in the audience. Stories like this keep history alive. Help us out with a like. Please subscribe, hit that notification bell, and share your opinion in the comments. Part 4. The Myth Preserved. Sometimes the danger to a film's legacy doesn't come from studio interference, but from a director's own alternate choice. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid is a meditation on myth-making and reckless optimism at the end of the outlaw era. The climax sees Butch and Sundance, played by Paul Newman and Robert Redford, wounded and surrounded by a Bolivian military force. The film ends on that immortalized freeze frame, accompanied only by the sound of the ensuing gunfire. This artistic decision preserves their spirit, transforming their certain demise into a moment of poignant, enduring defiance. It preserves their mythic idealism. But an alternate cut was shot that showed the full, explicit scene of the pair being gunned down. Had director George Roy Hill chosen this explicit depiction, the film's thematic core would have been betrayed. The raw visualization of their death would have reduced their legendary charge to simple carnage, sacrificing the emotional power of the ambiguity. The freeze frame maintains the visual cliffhanger, reflecting the historical uncertainty surrounding the real outlaw's fate. In this case, artistic restraint saved the film from becoming a conventional, bloody tragedy, allowing it to become a piece of enduring revisionist Western poetry. Part 5. Editing and Pacing. Sergio Leone's final installment in the Dollars trilogy, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, is revered for its masterful pacing. While the U.S. theatrical release suffered initial cuts, the most significant source of ruin for many modern viewers comes from a later, post-factum extended cut. This version, created decades after Leone's death, reinserted deleted scenes. The problem? Because these scenes weren't originally dubbed in English, the reinstatement required new actors to record lines decades later. The result was awkward audio synchronization and jarring vocal performances. More critically, the added footage disrupted the finely tuned pace of the film. Leone's international cut was perfectly calibrated to maximize tension, using Ennio Morricone's score and extreme close-ups with masterful timing. The extraneous scenes in the extended cut compromise this rhythmic integrity, demonstrating that even the addition of content can undermine a film if it violates the director's precise structure. Part 6. The Intentional Ruin. Finally, we look at the case of Alejandro Jodorowsky's El Topo, a surrealist, mystical western that deliberately defies classical narrative conventions. In this unique case, the ruin was not caused by a panicked studio seeking commercial gain, but by the director's own uncompromising choice of a shocking and highly divisive conclusion. The film's ending features a profound narrative turn followed by a particularly bloody end, culminating in El Topo's brutal slaughter of his followers and his own subsequent self-immolation. The sheer extremity and spiritual ambiguity of this conclusion, leaving viewers uncomfortable and uncertain whether the protagonist is being punished or forgiven. While intentional and revered in certain counterculture circles, the ending functionally ruined the film's chances at wider critical consensus and commercial success, relegating it to cult status. This proves that an excessively controversial, non-traditional conclusion, even if intentional, can effectively limit a film's lasting positive legacy outside of a niche audience. The legacy. The history of these altered Western finales offers a painful irony. The most severe instances of studio intervention, such as the aggressive truncation of Heaven's Gate, resulted in catastrophic commercial annihilation far worse than risking a complex artistic conclusion. Conversely, the endings that have stood the test of time, such as the freeze frame in Butch Cassidy, are those that adhered to a nuanced, non-traditional vision. The ultimate fate of these westerns confirms that the pursuit of superficial closure at the expense of thematic truth often leads to a diminished, fragmented, and ultimately unenduring work of art. The last-minute changes reveal a consistent prioritizing of expedient commercial packaging over profound cinematic narrative, leaving behind a legacy of damaged masterworks. The ending of a Western is its final moral or mythological statement. When the artist's hand is replaced by an executive's fear, the statement is lost. Of all the films we've discussed, which one do you believe was most fundamentally ruined by studio interference? And do you think a genuinely dark ending can ever be a commercial success in Hollywood? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We read the majority of them. If you like this video, be sure to check out some more history we've covered, including the one in the top left corner. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more authentic history.